Hi, I'm Jared Fisher, co-founder of Logistic, and today I have with me Mr. Gary McKenzie, Vice President of Operations. Gary, what the heck is the difference between a freight invoice and a bill of lading? As you know, I come from the parcel world. I hear these terms used frequently, but what is the difference?
An invoice is just like any other invoice. You know, it's something you get that some company sends you that tells you, you owe them money and here's how much you owe. And it does get confusing because they're often referred to as bills. And then there's the bill of lading. So the bill of lading in the freight world is a very specific document. As a matter of fact, that one piece of paper or electronic version of it is literally the contract of carriage between the shipper and the carrier for that particular shipment. So every bill of lading is a contract, and it sets forth all of the terms and conditions relative to the movement of goods from one place to another. So the shipper's paying for it. The bill of lading specifies exactly what's being moved, when it's being picked up, where it's being picked up, where is it going, what did that commodity look like, how much did it weigh. So all of the details about that carriage or that movement of goods is on a bill of lading. And it is signed at the beginning when the carrier picks it up, they sign it, and when it's received on the other end, they sign it. So it is a contract in and of itself for the movement of that particular freight.
Interesting. So the parcel equivalent would be for every parcel shipment that went out, for there to be a contract associated with that particular shipment. Why does the freight industry operate that way? Whereas the parcel industry does not.
The parcel industry is controlled and operated for the most part by just a few players, and they are aggregators. So they're
like UPS and FedEx.
Like UPS and FedEx. So what they do is they go around and they gather a bunch of smaller items, and then they move it within their network to wherever it's going. The freight industry itself was highly regulated long ago, and it started, probably with wheeled carts or whatever, but ultimately it applies to shipments of goods across oceans and internationally, and there's lots of regulations that go into the movement of freight, and even, especially internationally, and it is true in the parcel industry as well, but in the freight industry at scale, it's moving large quantities of certain commodities, and there's lots of rules regarding, even specific commodities that you can't ship, or like, there's certain like Amazonian tree or products made from Amazonian trees. I mean, just because of tariffs, et cetera, you cannot move those, or because there's prohibitions on moving those. So you need to have documents for the specific item that's being transported in some ways to make sure that the person's getting charged correctly and that you can find it on the truck, I guess. But more than that, it's also about adhering to all of our international laws. It's the same document that controls air freight, like in the freight sense, bulk freight. It controls shipping via cargo ship, so what's in containers, truckloads, less than truckloads. So basically your big bulky freight.
Got it, understood. Okay, so now that I have an understanding of what a bill of lading is, why are accurate bills of lading so important?
Just like anything else, accuracy is obviously always important, but in a bill of lading, since the very specific commodities are defined within that bill of lading, and that document is the contract, if it's inaccurate, any inaccuracies become a part of that contract. So for instance, if you were having me move gold chains across the US, but I put on the bill of lading styrofoam cups, and I lose that shipment, your claim against me will be for styrofoam cups. So the accuracy of that from both the shipper and the carrier, they all have to agree that this is what we're moving, and that's why their signature is required. That becomes the primary document. If there ever is a dispute, that document will define the claim.
Understood. And then how do bills of lading define service levels between, or service level agreements between freight providers or carriers and their clients?
As I stated, each move is its own contract of carriage. So that bill of lading, whatever's on that bill of lading, is the agreement. Now, you may have an overall pricing agreement between a shipper and a carrier, but for this move, this bill of lading is going to define this move. So let's say that I asked for expedited service, which means that ultimately I'll be paying more for it, but it needs to say that on the bill of lading, because if it doesn't say it on the bill of lading, then even though I'm paying for it, I'm not necessarily entitled to it. So I've agreed to a price. I asked this to be expedited. The contract doesn't say that, so they don't have to adhere to it. At the end of the day, this is the contract of carriage.
All right, so this may be a naive question, but what if there is no bill of lading? What if somebody forgets to include a bill of lading?
That's a very fair question, not naive, but if the carrier actually picks up your freight and without a bill of lading and ever does that, you need to basically discontinue using that carrier. And if you have anyone who's actually giving their freight to a carrier without a bill of lading, you probably need to rely on somebody else to do that for you, because the bill of lading is the document that defines the relationship between the carriers. So in effect, without a bill of lading, you are literally just giving those goods and services to whoever the carrier decides to deliver it to.
Understood. Okay, so what do freight invoices include that bills of lading do not?
Actually, a legitimate question, really to define the differences between invoices and bills of lading. The primary difference is the invoices have the cost on them. It's what you're actually being charged for, and bills of lading do not typically have that. The invoices should be calculated based on the bill of lading. In fact, they are, which is why, ensuring that you're auditing the bills of lading against the invoices you receive is a very important part of your logistics process, because that invoice should reflect that contract of carriage. But the contract of carriage, the bill of lading, doesn't typically have the costs.
Understood. Okay, that makes sense. So Gary, what are some of the things that shippers can do when preparing their bills of lading to prevent disputes?
That's actually a very good question. And I think one of the primary things that a shipper needs to do is ensure that they have the right commodity codes for what they're shipping. So the way freight works is every commodity, literally every commodity, the shirt you're wearing, this table, the components of this table, this cup, they all have an NMFC code, which defines exactly what that is relative to the transportation of freight. So having the code for whatever it is that you're shipping will ensure that what you're being charged for is accurate, because that's an indisputable. This is a cup, it has an NMFC code, I look at the cup, and no matter where I am, if I go try to find that code, it'll be the same. That way, when it gets back into the back office operations and they're creating the invoices for you, the NMFC code will make it absolutely clear. If you don't have an NMFC code, what they'll do is either try to assign one, and there are a lot of variation of cups, so they may be charging you for a bigger, heavier one than the one that you ship, or they will just simply kind of look at it and say, well, here's the size of it, here's the weight, here's the density of it, and we're going to charge you accordingly. So that is probably one of the best things that you can do, is to make sure that you're coding the commodity that you're shipping accurately and consistently every time on the bill of lading. Other things that you can do is make sure that your processes ensure that those are checked by the carriers and are signed by the carriers before they go, because before they pick it up and leave your dock, often they are delivered the bills of lading, but they neglect to sign them. And then that prevents, an absolute dispute, case. So sometimes you can, that is an actual argument from the carriers, is that I don't have a signed bill of lading. My carrier didn't sign it. So just making sure that everybody on the dock at that very last moment where you're handing off the freight to the carrier, that you have a quality check there, a quality assurance check there to make sure that all the boxes are checked, that the NMFC is there, that the pallets or the number of pallets that you're shipping are accurate. So you basically have another check to make sure that the information on the bills of lading are accurate before the carrier leaves your dock. That's probably the best thing you can do.
And is there an auditing process that fits into all of this?
Absolutely. On the other end of this, you get an invoice, from the carrier. So that carrier invoice should reflect all of the information that is on the bill of lading, and you should not be charged more than what the bill of lading basically suggests was being shipped. So if I ship 2 pallets, I should get a bill for 2 pallets. And if that class, which is another esoteric term in the freight industry, but if the NMFC for this cup is the one that was used, I should be billed according to the dimensions of boxes of cups.
Got it.
So the auditing process will make sure that the bills of lading and the invoices match so that you're paying the right amount to your carriers.
Understood. Gary, that was some great information, some great insight. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. For more information on how you can join the thousands of shippers nationwide currently using Logistic to send cost packing, please go to www.logistic.com.